Well, hello lovely humans, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to our new almost complete vlogging room. We're like this close to getting this space finished up. You know, we're just missing a headboard and stuff. If you are new here, hi, my name is Jamie Wolfer, and I am a wedding planner who also makes YouTube videos to help make sure that your wedding day is epic and wonderful and everything that you dreamed it would be. And real quick before we jump into the meat of today's video, just want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at HONEYFUND. No, this is not sponsored, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about this resource. A lot of couples already have the traditional items that most people would get on a traditional wedding registry. But what the creators of HONEYFUND saw is that most couples would not take a honeymoon, and most of the time it's simply because they can't afford it. So because I know you guys love it when I shout out a good resource, just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. I will leave the link down in the description box below if you want to check them out. I personally loved my experience with them, and I think you will too. So it's jwcoordination.com/honeyfund. Now we are in video 4 of a little series that I like to call pre-wedding parties. I'm the only one calling it that though, and I'm not even putting it in the titles of these videos. I digress. But in this week's video, we are covering the very last pre-wedding party that you might be having for your event, and that is the rehearsal dinner. If I had a nickel for every time someone asked me about rehearsal dinners, I would have a lot of nickels. So I'm so excited to be bringing it to you today. And without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. Now, sis loves a nice, cohesive, understandable list. So for this week's video, we're gonna go with who, what, where, when, why type planning, okay? Because I like organized videos. It just makes it so much easier to compartmentalize everything and like organize it, and hopefully you guys find it helpful too. Also, your girl just loves some lists. So let's start with the who. There are 2 different who's that we're discussing today. 1, who comes to a rehearsal dinner, and 2, who hosts/pays for rehearsal dinner, because that's an important part of the conversation. So 1, for who comes to the rehearsal dinner. You do have quite a few options here. Now, of course, as we usually do, we will talk about what is traditionally done, but y'all know that I am a big fan of shirking tradition when it doesn't fit what you want for your engagement and your big day, okay? So traditionally, it is the couple, the wedding party, and both of their families. It also may or may not include any out-of-town guests. Now, if you start looking at that, that can add up pretty quickly. So what a lot of couples will do is they will either limit it to just family and wedding party and not out-of-town guests, or they will turn it from a dinner to an open house style event where you are at a bar or at a restaurant and people can come and visit at their leisure and also pay for their own food and beverages to make it a little bit easier on your pocketbook. So if you want to invite more people, you feel the freedom to do so. You can invite as many people to a rehearsal dinner as you want. But if you're gonna call it a rehearsal dinner, that cost is going to add up very quickly. So it would be in your best interest to move it away from a full service meal. The second part of the who is who pays. Now, again, traditionally speaking, the groom's parents would pay for the rehearsal dinner because the bride's parents have paid for the wedding. Notice that I say that's traditional because a lot of couples are shying away from those norms these days. Also, there may not be a groom or there may not be a bride. So if you're going the traditional route, there you go. That historically has been the most common way of doing things. However, a lot of our couples are also taking on the cost of a rehearsal dinner as well. So this is where we encourage you to be really creative with the food that you're serving and the location that you're having it in to make it as cost effective as possible. So we did the who, now what? What is it? It's a dinner following the rehearsal. That's all I have for that one. This is literally in the name. Where do you have a rehearsal dinner? Now, much like the other events that we've talked about for the other pre-wedding parties, the engagement party and the wedding shower, you can basically have this wherever you want. But unlike those 2 events, this is the only one that literally has a meal in the title. So you kind of have to serve a meal if you're gonna call it a rehearsal dinner. I don't know why I did finger quotes there. That didn't make sense. It is a dinner. There's no about it. So you do need to make sure you are serving a meal or name it something different if you are not. You can't call it a rehearsal dinner if you're not gonna feed people dinner, because then there's a high likelihood that they're not gonna eat beforehand. So I recognize that's a really long explanation, but it really does help us define the where. You can hire out a venue, you can use somebody's backyard, or you can do it at a restaurant. Now, I personally like the idea of doing it at a restaurant, simply because it's everything you need in one place, it's one bill, and then you're done. If you are doing this at a specific venue or in someone's backyard, there is all those extra logistics that come into play. And since this is usually so close to your event, like the actual day of your event, you don't want to be dealing with all of those extra details, especially if you're running this yourself. So you're going to want to give yourself like a little bit of grace. You've already done a bunch of planning. It's probably going to be the easiest to go to a restaurant if you're doing a traditional style rehearsal dinner. Now, when does this happen? Again, most traditionally, this happens directly after the rehearsal. I know, I'm blowing your minds with my knowledge. You're so grateful for it. And the rehearsal obviously tends to happen the day before your wedding. So if you get married on a Saturday, your rehearsal and rehearsal dinner would be the Friday night before your event. That being said, a lot of couples are pushing it out and actually having their rehearsals on Thursday or another time during the week. Some of them are doing this because their venue doesn't have time for them to do a rehearsal on Friday because another event is happening there. Others do this because they want to space things out a little bit so they're just not like overwhelmed for like 48 to 72 hours of just stuff and people. So they have their rehearsal on a Thursday or on a Wednesday instead. I'm just gonna toss this out there as like a disclaimer. Coming from a wedding planner's perspective, if you plan on having your rehearsal earlier than a day before your event, let them know plenty in advance, because I know personally for me that does oftentimes throw a wrench in my normal life schedule. I don't mind doing it, but when someone tells me a week before their event that they're actually doing their rehearsal at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, that gets a little bit more complicated for me. So if you're gonna do that, let them know ahead of time. So if you're doing your rehearsal at the standard, typical, traditional time, then of course it makes sense to flow right into dinner afterwards. In my experience, most rehearsals take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and that's if everyone shows up on time. So usually I like to slot out about an hour, but the actual like rehearsal portion of things does not take that long. Of course, if you guys want to see like a step-by-step how to do a rehearsal, I highly recommend you jump on over to the master plan, because I have an entire video that tells you how to do a rehearsal, like a whole video. And I tell you how I do it, where to put your hands, what to do with your feet, what's your face, and where you hold the bouquet, and just all the stuff. So definitely jump on over to the master plan if you guys want to check that out. 10 out of 10 recommend, because I know it's because I made it, but I still recommend it. And then of course the dinner follows afterwards. So let's say that you have your rehearsal at 5:30. Let's say we're pretending in our minds it goes till about 6:30. Now, depending on drive time, you could feasibly have your dinner at about 7. So again, if we're going with the norm of things, why do I keep doing that? Okay, it would be the night before your event, directly and or immediately following your rehearsal. However, if you're doing rehearsal earlier in the week, or you're not doing a rehearsal at all, because that's still also a thing, and you just want to do an open house style one instead, that is again typically done the night before your event, but you can kind of scoot it out a little bit further. Just bear in mind, if you're going to be doing something outside of what is people normally expect for a rehearsal dinner, let people know ahead of time, especially if you have people coming in from out of town, or your wedding party is already taking off time from work or will need to take off time from work to make this happen. You want to over communicate that to your wedding party and to your wedding planner so they can plan accordingly. And lastly, why? Why do we do a rehearsal dinner? Now, there are quite a few different reasons why someone might do one. Some people might say, well, I do it because you're supposed to do it. That's like what tradition says, right? Sure, maybe that could be the reason for a lot of people. But the way I look at rehearsal dinners is it's a great way to say thank you. It's a great way to say thank you for all of those people who have traveled quite some distance that they had to come in the day before, and they're going to leave the day or two after your event because they wanted to be present with you and celebrate your love story. So it's a way of saying, hey, I know you drove all the way here, or I know you flew all the way here. Here is a meal. We'd love for you to come hang out with us in a more intimate environment as a way of just saying thank you. We know you're not at home, so let's just bless you with a meal. It's also a way to thank your family members and friends, wedding party, etc., for the hard work that they've put both into this event alongside you and for their investment that they have put into your life and this relationship. So it's just a really sweet way of giving back and honoring those people that you love so very much with just an extra meal, which when I phrase it like that, it makes it sound like, oh, just throw it on the pile at this point. Like, obviously it could still be really expensive, so plan accordingly. But just a moment where you get to say thank you. Now, I know I'm gonna have to cover this. What exactly happens at a rehearsal dinner? Like, when you get there, what do you do? Well, you eat dinner, traditionally, at the rehearsal dinner. But what trips people up the most is toasts at the rehearsal dinner. There's a whole lot of things you can do this, okay? Again, with the most traditional way of doing things, it is typically, obviously, the father of the groom or the parents of the groom who pay for and host this event. So the father of the groom would typically get up and give a welcome speech, a welcome toast, and then he could be followed by the father of the bride or parents of the bride if they choose to do so as well. The best man can give one. Usually this is much more relaxed, less practiced, more funny, more roasty type of toast than you will see on the actual wedding day because it's a more intimate and casual environment than an actual wedding is. A lot of people will then turn to open mic during the toasting portion of things, even though there may not be an actual physical mic. They will just open the floor for anyone who wants to give a toast. And because this is a much more intimate group, you can choose to do that if you feel comfortable with that, or you can just totally skip over it and it doesn't matter. The best way to round out those toasts and or speeches is for you and your spouse-to-be to stand on up and give a quick thank you to those who are there. This is also a great opportunity to give out those wedding party gifts, especially those that you want your wedding party to wear and or use the next day. So after you've given your little thank you, this is when you pass those out. If you have a gift for your new in-laws, this is when you would give that to them as well, just because the next day is going to be so chaotic. So it's best to pass all those out and get it checked off your list so the gals in your wedding party know what bracelets they're supposed to be wearing, so the guys have their pocket squares and their neckties and their flasks or whatever you're passing out for them to utilize and or wear as well the next day. All in all, rehearsal dinners are becoming so much more casual and so much more relaxed. Obviously, I've just laid out the groundwork of what one could look like. But as per usual, I'm gonna tell you to just do you. Do whatever makes you and your honey really excited, really comfortable, and really enjoy your experience. So that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you have not done so already, jump on down there, hit that thumbs up, because every single thumbs up actually really, really helps the algorithm for my channel, and I appreciate it. And subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week, bye guys. These days are